Hello and most welcome to Age 1925. We have today the privilege of presenting a new article by Gilles Deleuze, the great French philosopher, for the first time in the series, by initiative of Kalle Lundar to my side here. Congratulations, Kalle.
Tack.
Well done. It's translated by Daniel Smith and Michael Greco, and it's called Essays, Critical and Clinical. Or we can put Deleuze in some sort of context and to say that we have former taken up other French philosophers like Jacques Derrida, Lacan.
Lacan, no.
Comment?
No Lacan.
Lacan, yes, one time, yeah. Merleau-Ponty as well.
No, Lacan, we haven't discussed Lacan. Sorry.
Lacan, yeah.
No, we haven't discussed Lacan.
Was one time, yes.
No, I don't agree.
Okay. Merleau-Ponty, do you remember him?
Yes.
Yes. And Piaget on half time. And I think, I'm not sure, maybe we went into George Bataille with Arkady Plotnitsky. I don't remember, but possibly. So we had our heap, and Paul de Man, not to be forgotten. So we had our heap with French philosophers before, and now another is to be entering. And I'll continue on, start on the first page. It's number 2 in the PDF and 36 in the written script. Nietzsche, St. Paul, Lawrence, and John of Patmos. It's not the same. It can't be the same. D.H. Lawrence intervenes in the scholarly debates of those who ask if the St. John wrote both the Gospel and the Apocalypse. Apocalypse! Lawrence intervenes with very passionate arguments, which have all the more force in that they imply a method of evaluation, a typology. The same type of man could not have written the Gospel and the Apocalypse. The Apocalypse. It's an easy word to twist your tongue with. It matters little that each of the two texts is complex or composite and includes so many different things. The question does not concern two individuals or two authors, but two types of man, two regions of the soul, two completely different ensembles. The Gospel is aristocratic, individual, soft, amorous, decadent, always rather cultivated. Cultivated, indeed. The Apocalypse is collective, popular, uncultivated, hateful, and savage. Savaged. Each of these words would have to be explained in order to avoid misunderstandings. But already the evangelist and the apocalypse cannot be the same. The same. John of Patmos does not even assume the mask of the evangelist. And the apocalypse, nor that of Christ. He invents another mask. He fabricates another mask that unmasks Christ. Or if you prefer, that is superimposed on Christ's mask.
Oj, oj, oj.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
Superimposed on Christ's mask.
You should say ouch, ouch, ouch. It's more English. John of Patmos deals with cosmic terror and death, whereas the gospel and Christ dealt with human and spiritual love.
Love.
Love. Christ invented a religion of love, a practice, a way of living, and not a belief. Whereas the apocalypse brings a religion of power, pouvoir. Pouvoir. A belief, a terrible manner of judging, instead of the gift of Christ, an infinite debt. It goes without saying that Lawrence's text is best read after having read or reread the text of the Apocalypse. The Apocalypse. We can immediately sense the topicality of both the Apocalypse and Lawrence's denunciation of it. Denunciation. This topicality does not consist in historical correspondences of the type Nero, Hitler equals the Antichrist, nor in the supra-historical sentiment of the end of the world. End of the world. Nor in the atomic, economic, ecologic, and science fiction panic of the millenarians. The millenarians.
Millennials.
Not the milliardaires, the millionaires.
Millennials.
If we are steeped in the apocalypse, it is rather because it inspires ways of living, surviving, and judging in each of us. In each of us. It is a book for all those who think of themselves as survivors. It is a book of zombies. Lawrence is closely related to Nietzsche. We can assume that Lawrence would not have written his text without Nietzsche's Antichrist. Nietzsche himself was not the first. Nor even Spinoza. A certain number of visionaries have opposed Christ as an amorous person to Christianity, as a mortuary enterprise. The first laughter of Kalle Lundahl. Very good. The mortuary enterprise. Nor that they have an overly accommodating attitude toward Christ. But they do feel the need to avoid confusing him with Christianity.
Christianity.
Christianity. In Nietzsche, there is a great opposition between Christ and Saint Paul. Christ, the softest, most amorous of the decadents. A kind of Buddha who frees us from the domination of priests and the ideas of fault, punishment, reward, judgment, death, and what follows death. This bearer of glad tidings is doubled by the black Saint Paul, who keeps Christ on the cross, ceaselessly leading him back to it, making him rise from the dead, displacing the center of gravity toward eternal life. And inventing a new type of priest, even more terrible than its predecessors. Predecessors. Paul's invention, his means to priestly tyranny, to herd formation, the belief in immortality, that is the doctrine of judgment. Judgment. Lawrence takes up the opposition once again. But this time he opposes Christ to the Red John of Patmos. Patmos, the author of the Apocalypse. This was Lawrence's mortal book, since it only slightly preceded his red hemotypical hemoptysical death, just as the Antichrist preceded Nietzsche's collapse. His collapse. Before dying, one last joyful message.
Joyful message.
One last glad tiding. It is not that. Who continues?
Yeah.
It is not that Lawrence simply imitates Nietzsche. Rather, he picks up an arrow, Nietzsche's arrow, and shoots it everywhere, aims it in a different direction on another comment to another audience.
Audience.
Nature propels the philosopher into mankind like an arrow.
Arrow.
Like an arrow. It takes no aim, but hopes the arrow will stick somewhere. Somewhere over the rainbow. Mm-hmm. Lawrence takes up Nietzsche's initiative by taking John of Patmos as his target and no longer St. Paul. Many things change or are supplemented from one initiative to another. And even what they have in common gains in strength and novelty. Novelty. Christ's enterprise is individual. In itself, the individual is not necessarily opposed to the collectivity. Individual and collective stand opposed in each of us like two different parts of the soul. The soul. Now Christ rarely addresses himself to what is collective in us. His problem was rather to undo the collective system of the Old Testament priesthood,
Priesthood.
of the Jewish priesthood, and its power, but only to liberate the individual soul from this morass.
For us. As.
No, no.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Thank you. As for Caesar, he would give him his due. That is why he is aristocratic. Aristocratic. He thought a culture of the individual soul would be enough to chase off the monsters buried in the collective soul.
Collective
soul.
soul.
A political error.
Error.
He left us to manage with the collective soul. With Caesar outside us and inside us. On this score, he constantly deceived his apostles and disciples.
No.
We might even imagine that he did so on purpose. He did not want to be a master or to help his disciple, only to love them, he said.
Uh-oh.
But what did that hide? He did not really mix with them, or even really work or act with them. He was alone all the time.
Alone all the time.
The time.
Alone.
He puzzled them utterly. And in some part of them, he let them down.
Ouch, ouch.
Oh dear. He refused to be their physical power lord. The power homage in a man like Judas found itself betrayed, so it betrayed back again.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
The apostles and disciples made Christ pay for it. Denial, betrayal, falsification, the shameless doctrine of the good news. Lawrence says that the principal character of Christianity is Judas. And then John of Patmos, and then Saint Paul. New order. Each of them took advantage of the protests of the collective soul, the part neglected by Christ. The apocalypse takes advantage of the claims of the poor or the weak, for they are not who we think they are. They are not the humble or the unfortunate.
Ouch, ouch.
Ouch, 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 or oh dear. But those extremely fearsome men who have nothing but a collective soul. Among Lawrence's most beautiful passages are those on the Lamb. John of Patmos foretells the Lion of Judah. But instead, a lamb appears, a horned lamb who roars like a lion and has become particularly cunning, and who is made all the more cruel and terrifying by being presented as a sacrificial victim and no longer as a sacrificer or an executioner. Executioner!
We need more executions.
But the Lamb is a more dreadful executioner than the others. The others. The others. John insists on a lamb, as it were, slain, but we never see it slain. We only see it slaying mankind by the million.
Ouch, ouch. Alright, alright.
Even when it comes on in a victorious, bloody shirt at the end. And the blood is not its own blood. In truth, it is Christianity that becomes the Antichrist. It betrays Christ. It forces a collective soul on him behind his back and in return gives the collective soul a superficial individual figure, the little lamb. Christianity, and above all, John of Patmos, founded a new type of man and a type of thinker that still exists today, enjoying a new reign, the carnivorous lamb. The lamb that bites and then cries, "Help! What did I ever do to you?" It was for your own good and our common cause. What a curious figure, the modern thinker. These lambs in lion's skin with oversized teeth. No longer need either the priest's habit or, as Lawrence said, the Salvation Army. They have conquered many other means of expression, many other popular forces. What the collective soul wants is power. Pouvoir. Power. Oh dear. Give me power, strength. Lawrence does not say simple things. And it would be wrong here to think we have understood him immediately. The collective soul does not simply want to seize power and to replace the despot. On the one hand, it wants to destroy power. It hates power and strength. John of Patmos hates Caesar, all the Roman Empire, with all his hearts. On the other hand, however, it also wants to penetrate into every pore of power, to swarm in its center, to multiply them throughout the universe. Universe. It wants a cosmopolitan power, not in the full view like the empire, but rather in every nook and cranny, in every dark corner. Yes, good language. In every fold of the collective soul. Finally, and above all, it wants an ultimate power that makes no appeal to the gods, but is itself the power of God. Without appeal, who judges all other powers? Christianity does not form a pact with the Roman Empire, but transmutes it. With the apocalypse, Christianity invents a completely new image of power. The system of judgment. That's what. The painter Gustave Courbet spoke of people who woke up at night crying, I want to judge. I have to judge. The will to destroy, the will to infiltrate every corner, the will to forever have the last word. A triple will that is unified and obstinate. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Power singularity changes its nature, its extension, its distribution, its intensity, its means, and its end. A counterpower which is both a power of nooks and crannies, and a power of the last man. But power no longer exists except as the long politics of vengeance. Vengeance.
Vengeance.
The long enterprise of the collective soul's narcissism, the revenge and self-glorification of the weak, says Lawrence Nietzsche.
Lawrence Nietzsche.
Even the Greek asphodel will become the Christian Narcissus. Narcissus. And what details are provided in the list of vengeances and glories? The weak can be reproached for only one thing. And that is for not being hard enough. Hard enough. For not being puffed up enough with their own glory and certainty. Now for this enterprise of the collective soul, a new race of priests, a new type would have to be invented, even if this meant turning against the Jewish priest. The latter had not yet attained universality or finality. He was still too local. He was still waiting for something. Something. The Christian priest would have to take over from the Jewish priest, even if both would have to turn against Christ. Christ will be made to submit to the worst of prosthesis. He will be turned into the hero of the collective soul. He will be made to give the collective soul something he never wanted to give. Or rather, Christianity will give him what he always hated. A collective ego, a collective soul.
So,
Soul. The apocalypse is a monstrous ego grafted onto Christ. John of Patmos's efforts are all directed toward this aim. Always the titles of power, and never the titles of love.
oh,
Love. Always Christ, the omnipotent conqueror, flashing his great sword and destroying vast masses of men till blood runs up to the horses' bridles.
yeah.
Yeehaw. Never Christ the Savior, never. In the Apocalypse, the Son of Man comes to bring a new and terrible power onto the earth. Power greater than that of any Pompey or Alexander or Cyrus. Cyrus.
That's
Power, terrific, smiting power. So that we are left puzzled.
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 For this, Christ will be forced to rise from the dead. He will be given injections.
Injections.
He who did not judge, who did not want to judge, will be made into an essential cog in the system of judgment. For the vengeance of the weak or the new power achieves its utmost precision when judgment, the abominable faculty, becomes the master faculty of the soul.
So,
On the soul, indeed. The Apocalypse 1. We have never left the system of judgment. Then I saw thrones, and seated upon them were those to whom judgment was committed. I think committed would be an excellent stopping point for 19, what do we have, 25?
Committed, yes, 1925.
It's 24th of November,
The page is
40.
yes, indeed.
Page 40. Let me take some outtakes from this text. On page 37, if you may, Kalle.
Yes. 7.
Here we have an indication. The last sentence of that page. The page is rather introductory, so it is not that much material as of yet. But here we find something of a hint. Many things change or are supplemented from one initiative to another, and even what they have in common gains in strength and novelty. This will be pertinent when we get into the collectivity. Something of a favorite when it comes to Gilles Deleuze. On page 38, the second paragraph, if you might, towards the end of the first little sniblet of that paragraph, the quote. 38.
38.
38.
Yes.
And towards the end of the quote, well, the second end of the quote.
There.
It's a quote. You can see the quote because it goes in a bit. Yeah, you got the quote there. That would be perfect. He left us to manage with the collective soul, with Caesar, outside us and inside us. On this score, he constantly deceived his apostles and disciples. Here we have three different interesting things. First, mentioning of the collective soul. Remember the Deleuzian track. Things are adding. They are adding to each other. We end up with a collective soul. And with Caesar, inside and outside us, or outside and inside us. Here, once more, we have the connection between exo and endo. So we have all the relations, and we have the exo in the endo. We have three things. They come together to form what he calls the collective soul. If we go further down on the last paragraph there, I would just take a sniblet of a sentence. But those extremely fearsome men who have nothing but a collective soul. It's a sniblet, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, Kalle, but it's a sniblet of the sentence. Once more is a mentioning of the collective soul. And he returns to that 4 times. If we go to page 39, and a pretty long paragraph here, the second one begins with what, and we go down circa 11 lines. It wants a cosmopolitan power, not in the full view like the empire, but rather every nook and cranny, in every dark corner, in every fold of the collective soul. So here is imagine a massive relation taking in everything, every nook and cranny. You have the nooks here, you have the crannies, every corner, exo and endo. And there is a hint here that Gilles Deleuze sort of opposites the collective soul to the individualistic human soul or personal soul of Christ. I'll use what we know about relations and singularity. In quantum relativism, singularity is actually built up exactly by every dark corner, every nook and cranny. And you actually have a mentioning of every fold of the collective soul. It's folded, it's implicit. Once more, we have the David Bohmian idea of the implicit. We get this massive singularity from the collective, not despite it. I'd say there is no opposition between the soul of the soul of Christ, the singularity of Christ. I need to put a little stop here. I'm apologizing for that. I'm awaiting a call from my doctor. So I've returned and I continue here. Sorry for the delay. It was a very important call. A good thing that one could pause. As I said, the collective soul is every nook and cranny, in every dark corner, in every fold of the collective soul. David Bohm calls the implicit enfoldment. Terry Marks Tarlow and Susie Froebel is speaking of the fractal depth of space and time. In this, when all relations are taken in, we go past the little bubble that we mentioned in 1993. No, 1924 today. That not disclosed. The closed sphere where inside is the ego, and in this example could be the the mind reading process, but it could be any sort of inner monoendo, only inside. And of course, that sharp division between concepts. It's either or, and it's the very sharpness which is problematic. That is problematic. Remember, as I've said so many times, remember the coastline of Norway. It's a good mental picture to understand what is quantum relation, where every global aspect goes in to make a singularity like this one. And that stands into opposition of the regular idea. What is the regular idea? The regular idea sounds a bit like this. The whole world are made up with singularities. Add enough of singularities and you get plurality. Each singularity has defined space, time. X, Y, Z, and T. They sort of have markings. You can look into them and they have, where am I? I am here. In that sense, they are not identical because they are different places. However, in quantum relation, Carlo Rovelli and many others now, it is singularities made up of all relations in the whole of the universe. Otherwise, there will be no singularity. Exactly. Definitely. Very good. There will be no singularity, there will be no plurality, will be no properties whatsoever. And here we have a bit further down on page 39. Power singularly changes its nature, its extension, its distribution, its intensity, its means, and its end. Here we could rather see that the singularity comes from the Trinity. It's unified, and because it's plural, it can be singular. So the collective soul is not contradictory to the individual soul of Christ. The permanent soul of Christ is the collective soul, because without the collectivity, there will be no singularity. And that singularity will be so strong. It will be so strong that it could never cease. It's unceasable. It is eternal. Further down on the page, I will not take up that particularly, but there is another mentioning at the last turn. Now, for this enterprise of the collective soul, a new race of priests, a new type would have to be invented. Not necessarily, because what Gilles Deleuze is pointing to is the individual soul as well. Being together with others, family, friends, next of kin, friend and foe, is what makes up individuality, as well as the collective. It brings in both outside and inside and outside of Caesar. This is what it constitutes from. And this incessant transgression of what we usually see as definite borders of inside and outside needs to be transgressed to exist. Otherwise, you don't have the coastline of Norway either. This is how things come to exist. And as we spoke earlier about determinism being the fault of private language argument in 1923 or 24, we now see the idea of a contradisposition or an absolute contradiction between the singular and the collective leads to the problem of there being no individual soul is also now counteracted. It's a sort of not thoroughly thought of. You see, my soul is both the collective and the individual. Therefore, it can be singular and plural. Kalle, please join.
The microphone.
Yes, the microphone.
Let me go to page 37. So 37 here, you middle of the page. Lawrence takes up the position once again, but this time he opposes Christ to the red John of Patmos. So John would be has the qualification of being red in the sense of wanting the death of many people because it describes judgments, killings of thousands of people.
Yeah,
So this is
is
the
that murderous John?
yes, indeed. And but I would take the linger on this qualification red, but this time thinking about the communistic red. And so if the Gospel of John is individual, then the book of Revelation is pluralistic, collective. And this one suits them to this red of communistic red. And but is so he wants to say that for Deleuze there is only one type of death or red, that is the bad red.
Yeah, indeed, yes.
But there is also implicitly also the good red.
Oh yeah, definitely.
For Deleuze, I read about Deleuze and he was a post-Marxist or Marxist. He was going to write a book about Karl Marx.
Oh, indeed.
So, and Deleuze has he points many fingers, like Lawrence. So things that are bad for both Deleuze and for Lawrence and for Nietzsche, of course, are things like judgment. Deleuze quotes Gustave Courbet, the famous painter,
Lovely
the
painter.
workers' painter, you could say, who said that people can wake up in the middle of the night and say, I want to judge and judge.
Yes.
So for Deleuze, judging is something bad. Judgment is bad. Also, something else that is bad for Deleuze and Nietzsche is the weak people. Christ was weak, according to Nietzsche and company. And he thinks also individualism is bad. So there are many fingers. So he's pointing fingers at judgment, weakness, individuality, and even at Christ.
Oh yeah, he does.
So the only thing that is good for Deleuze, I think, is the collective. The strength is in the collective. That is Deleuze's take. But still, for Deleuze, even so, Christianity, which should be a collective, is something bad. Because he says that on page 38 that page 38 it says that somewhere on the page he says Christianity becomes Antichrist. Ah yes, indeed there. In truth, almost perhaps a few lines from down, 4 lines from down.
Okay.
Christianity becomes Antichrist.
Yeah.
Although, if you follow Deleuze, the collectivity, Christians would be something good.
Yeah.
But in many sects, reason like this, even, for instance, Jehovah's Witnesses say that Christianity, more or less like the Antichrist.
I didn't know that. Okay, so
So it's easy to point fingers at Christianity. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to return to Christ, to the pure origin. And so forth and so forth.
Yeah, skip all the relations, just rely on written text. That's singular.
But I think Deleuze's point or philosophy is even frightening, because for him justness is bad, weakness is bad, Christ is bad, individuality is bad. So is there something? But okay, the polarities are good. The only thing, the few things I like is these clear-cut polarities, like the Gospel of John is the individual, and the Apocalypse is.
I did like that as well. Hooray! Yeah, that was good.
So that's the good thing. But the rest of
he also brought in a painter like Gustav Courbet.
The Gospel is alltså grafic individual soft amorosity cadent amorosity. I think this is I think is actually interesting, and it's difficult to argue against this.
Yeah, okay.
But it's of course very base 36. So it's of course oversimplification, but sometimes oversimplifications are effective.
Oh yeah, could well be, yeah.
But I want to ask our guest, Mirja, if she wants to say, I'm sure you want to say something before that.
I just want to end up here. Poor Nietzsche, he was born before quantum mechanics. He wanted to believe in God. He was a devout Christian from the beginning. But of course, it doesn't work with that standard logic. And he paid the ultimate price. And there is no God, there is no soul. It's deterministic. And we need to realize that the whole post-Marxist French, German, continental philosophy is hugely influenced or are Nietzschean. And the conclusions there are no other conclusions to come to except for in quantum mechanics. And that's not a small thing, that's science as well. So that's the biggest fundament you can have. There is nothing that can beat that. And it says that singularities come from collective. So that trumps everything. And I'd say the suffering of Nietzsche, that was extensive. Poor guy. He lost his mind, I think, even worse than losing your life. So he was born before the salvation, before the ominous, fantastic year of the 1920s. But please enter, Mirja.
Unmute yourself, please, Mirja. If you want to say something.
Hi from me. Do you hear me?
Do we hear? Yes, it's. We don't hear anything. Let's see.
No, maybe.
Maybe try to speak. Say something.
Hi, do you hear me now?
Now,
yes. Yeah, I hear you. Welcome, Mirja.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me into your discussions, presentations. I would love to become a consistent part. Today I came quite late into the talk, so I just caught a very little part of the text. I wouldn't dare, out of the respect towards the authors and also towards you, to comment. But I would just mention that I worked with Deleuze, where when I work with the term of or concept of tekne and a power of affirmative life, or the limits of what life can do, mainly in biotechnology. So I use Deleuze only there. I can't discuss this text because I have touched upon only a small part of it. So yeah, out of respect, as I said, towards you and the authors and the author of the text, I wouldn't. But please go on. Maybe I can join you in developing some discussion around. I would love to continue hearing you.
Why, thank you very much, and most welcome, Mirja. We'll today round off pretty soon here, but you're most welcome until next time to join the discussion.
We might continue to fire up in 1 hour. We might, depending on the house. But let's end this lecture of today.
It was
Okay.
nice meeting you, Mirja.
Yeah, the same, likewise. I was longing to meet you for a long time. Kalle was telling me a lot about you. So, Hans, it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, likewise, it was a pleasure hearing you, Mirja. Have a very nice day.
The same.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Kalle Lundar, for listening in and for your comments. Excellent as usual. Have a very pleasant day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.